welcome to British summertime. I wouldn't believe it's August, would you? I'm here with Stephen and Leo. We've come to, we're having a bunker day today. We'll come and have a look at some of the old ROC bunkers, mostly from the Cold War, aren't they?
Yeah.
We're in Whitwell, so my home village, and this is kind of why we're doing this video, because we got talking about this, didn't we?
Yeah.
A couple of months ago. You've got family history in Whitwell, obviously I live here in Whitwell, and we've got the old, you say it was an old World War II lookout, aircraft lookout.
Started off as a lookout post,
yeah.
For enemy aircraft coming over, so they would report back to a headquarters or to the next post along, which is like 15 miles apart.
Yeah.
And they just basically communicate between each other to spot enemy aircraft. Then obviously when it became nuclear, they had to go underground, because standing up on top of a hill, and when a bomb goes off, you're pretty much buggered.
Yeah, so it's under there somewhere. I mean, it is. There are photos of this from recently, not too long ago, but it's just abandoned now. It's in there. You're not. I mean, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of hard work, isn't it? Just getting in there to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
plenty of photos on Facebook that people took of this. Yeah, but it's welded shut now.
Yeah.
I understand. Telegraph pole up there. I actually saw this telegraph pole before I knew this bunker was here. I thought, that's strange. My line of work, I noticed things like that. And I thought, what is that? What's that telegraph pole doing?
In the middle of a field.
Yeah, randomly, just one wire stopping there. So this video isn't just about Whitwell. We're off to look at a couple of different examples of these ROC. ROC is Royal Observer Corps, isn't it? Yeah. So we'll learn more about this as the video progresses, but we're off to have a look at a nicely restored, good example of one, aren't we now? Yeah.
So as soon as you've seen one, you've seen them all. So it'll be identical to this, but obviously different location, exactly the same processes that they carried out.
The Observer Corps was a civil defence organisation founded in 1925 to visually detect, identify, track and report over Great Britain. It comprised of civilian volunteers. The OC was officially given the title Royal Observer Corps by 1941 by King George VI for their role during the Battle of Britain. The ROC will be broken up into groups across the UK consisting of roughly 30 to 40 posts. Each group would have their own headquarters to which each post would report. Each post would be spaced around 10 to 15 miles apart and would consist of a team of plotters. One person would be on the lookout for aircraft using binoculars, another on the plotting instrument, and another on the phone either contacting the next post or HQ. The HQ would have a plotting room consisting of a large map where the planes can be tracked. This information would then be passed on to local airfields so aircraft can be scrambled to intercept the enemy planes. After World War II, things heated up with Russia and the threat changed from conventional bombs to nuclear bombs. From 1956, underground posts were being built. There will be a total of 1,500 plus posts built roughly 8 miles apart. We'll see an example of this in a moment, but the bunker would be sunk down into a 9-foot deep hole and be cast out in reinforced concrete. The floor would be 12-inch thick, walls 7-inch thick, and the roof would be 8-inch thick. The whole shell would then be bitumen tanked as waterproofing and then be covered over with soil, leaving the access shaft sticking up, which would double up as a ventilation shaft. By 1968, half the posts would have to close due to a major shake-up and reduction in ROC members. Come 1991 and the fall of the Soviet Union, the ROC posts and staff will become obsolete. The land where the posts sat were handed back to the original landowners. Here they were either demolished and filled in, left in situ or restored. A massive thanks to Jed at Buckminster Bunker for the tour that you're about to see in the next 30 minutes or so. They've done a great job at restoring the bunker. They don't leave anything down here when they're not there. They bring everything on the day of a visit, for example. So nothing's left down there unattended when they're not at the site. So a big thanks for the time that they gave up for the demonstration on our visit, and just to give it a shout out for their Facebook page and also their next open day, which is on the 23rd of September.
So this is the main access to an ROC post. This is the hatch lid. This one is slightly different to some of the earlier ones. The earlier ones had a big counterweight to allow you to pop it open. This one is sprung loaded, and the reason for that is in the 1980s this particular one was broken into by CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, and they came in and they broke a number of things on the inside, and as such they decided to fit it with a stronger hatch, and this would have had a metal grill over the top, so you could lock it away. So that's why this one differs slightly from some of the others. We've got a T-bar key. This is how you would open up the hatch normally, and to the side of the hatch we've got this item here, which was known as biscuit tin, but is properly known as a ground zero indicator. It's mounted on a little metal plate underneath, and you can only mount it one way, so it will always be pointing in the right direction. So at the minute I'm facing north, and if we pop this off, you'll see there's 4 concave lenses in here: north, south, east and west. Photographic paper would be on the inside here, and if you'll notice on the biscuit tin we've got little holes, and this works like a pinhole camera. So the sunlight will expose the photographic paper, but if there's a nuclear blast, the light from that is so much more powerful for a few seconds than the sun, and that will produce a dot through the pinhole camera of what was of the direction and the elevation of the blast. So this is actually the back of the post that's underground. This is just an air vent. You can see the louvres here, the metal ones, and there's one by the side of the hatch as well. So that's just taking in the air, and indeed whatever's in the air post-nuclear blast as well. So there's no method of air purification, it's just whatever's out there at the time. On the master posts, they would have had extra radio gear on this with an extendable aerial. This one wasn't the master post. In this little cluster here, they had the Grantham post, and the master post was at Bourne. And they would have had anchor points and an extendable aerial, so you can actually talk to the headquarters, which for this particular post at Buckminster would have been Lincoln with 15 group. We've got a couple of other features on the ground here. We'll start off with the smallest one. This is the one that you normally trip over when you're mowing. And on top of here we have what's known as a baffle. The blast wave from a nuclear bomb would come through here, and it works kind of in a similar way to like a kid's windmill that you can get at the beach, and it blows it round, and the air compresses a set of bellows down with an instrument on the inside known as a bomb power indicator. So that would fix on the top there. This particular feature here, we haven't got the top bit. What would normally be on the top bit would be something that looks like a cone with almost like a 2-litre bottle of Coke on top, and that's a hollow dome for something called a fixed survey meter, which helps measure the level of fallout and radiation within the air. So that would, this top plate would come off, that would screw on. Quite an interesting feature with some of these top plates. This one's just got bolts on. In the ROC posts in Northern Ireland, they had a long pole that went all the way down, so you could lock it up from the inside, because the ones that were based in Northern Ireland, the IRA used to take these off and drop a firebomb down the hole. So they had a special locking one, so it couldn't be done from the surface.
Are quite good. Attack warning.
Is it for real?
Attack warning's for bloody real.
Is it?
Right, get to your stations.
Come on, put yourself. Get ready, get ready.
Make sure you put filters every room.
I think it'll be more graceful filming you going down than you filming me going down, to be honest.
Sign saying please mind your head and back.
I'm not going to get wedged, am I?
Just bring me.
Fetch some butter in the bag, just in case.
catch it before. That's it.
And what was on the ground originally were National Cold War's old conveyor belt pieces,
Right.
which this place had been flooded. It had been then pumped out. So when we first came down, we were expecting it to be finished. That's actually the original bulb.
Is it? About to say, but there's not much
And it's
wattage going through.
still working. They started to put these in the 80s. But what you'd used to do is you used to have a candle and you'd put that in front of the mirror to reflect the light back into the room. And if you're under operation, if you're operational, you would flick the lamp on for 10 minutes every hour to give you the impression of daylight.
Right.
That was what psychologists recommended back then. Well, what they had is that everything works off batteries. So you got the batteries down there. The ones on the left, they were the earliest ones. The ones on the right are slightly later ones from the 80s. Because when they first tested these, they used tank batteries to power them.
Right.
And then they would go into that battery box. So there's just a car battery in there at the minute. But you have a generator. So there's a petrol generator, which is inside there by the loo. Yeah, so they're the batteries. The ones on the right are the later ones. They're actually from the Bourne Post. In fact, they're both from the Bourne Post. A gentleman called John Baxter, who helped with some of the restoration. He was an ex-Bourne member and took some stuff with him. We've got his uniform as well. That's a slightly earlier one. And then the other bits and pieces we've got in this corner. This particular post didn't have a locker, as far as we're aware. But a lot of them did for keeping stuff in, because some of them were customised by the members.
Right.
So there was one post which had underneath the back hatch, they put up a false window with a picture of outside and a net curtain and a shelf with a pot plant on it.
Yeah.
Which is quite nice. There's one at a post not too far away called Harby, and they rigged up a water tank in the corner with a sink.
Right.
So they filled the water tank up every time rather than the ordinary water bottles. So the bits and pieces we've got in this corner. Well, we'll start obviously off with the door. Air vent at the bottom. This style of jacket, these were issued to the Royal Observer Corps in the very late 1950s into the 60s. Some posts retain these right the way to the end. These were ex-army. The army had switched over to DPM in the mid-60s, and it was completed by the early 70s. So these were surplus, and a lot of ROC members got them. This is the rain cape. This one was from this post. It was still on the back of the door when we came down. So we got that there. In this corner we've got the asbestos fire blanket, which is all sealed up, so we're nice and safe. And obviously we've got the light switch, and the thing above it is a timing switch. It's doesn't work anymore. It's just on there for show, so that the light would go off if, say, you didn't run the batteries down too much. If you forgot. We've then obviously got the locker, couple of period bits and pieces on there, and then we've got a couple of the uniform bits. So we've got a raincoat, which was the same one as issued to the RAF, and also the overall, again RAF issue, but with the Royal Observer Corps badge on it as well. On the top of the locker, we've got a Royal Observer Corps officer's cap. This particular badge belonged to the officer for this post, a man called Mr. Bellamy, and he was the officer for this cluster. We've also got his uniform as well in store, so that's a nice addition up there. And then over in the corner, we've got on the back the 3 pipes there. This is for what's known as a maroon. And the way this was fired to warn the population, if there was any left, of course, of fallout. There's a cable here. It's very, very long. Those ends go into the maroon, and then what you did to fire it is you touched the other end directly to the battery, and that's what fired the black smoke to let everybody know there was something coming. Stay indoors. And then on the wall, we've got part of the WB 1401. So the thing that this is connected to at the minute on the table down here, this is part of the 1400. So this style at the bottom was mainly used in hospitals, police stations, fire stations, and also at group headquarters as well. You can see that the warning district for this one was 19 Group based at Colchester. So although the external design is slightly different, it works in exactly the same way. And it's a bit like if you were in hospital and you're wired up to a machine, you've got a nice rhythmic beep, and whilst that rhythmic beep is going, you're okay. When it starts to go mad, then you've got problems. Same with this, except it's not cardiac arrest, it's nuclear war coming through there instead. So that's what you've got on the table there. Next to that, you have a decimated charger. So on my uniform, I have a small decimeter here, and you would look through there, through the end, and there's a scale, and it measures in something called millisieverts, and it shows you how much dose you've had if you had to go outside. If you've not had enough to cause any serious damage, you would come back down, reset it back to 0, and then you could go outside again and find out how much more radiation you've acquired. And from 1968, the Observer Corps were doing this quite a lot. They had mobile monitoring, and they took a mobile recorder. So this is one of the mobile recorders here. This is the later ones, introduced in the very, very late 1970s. I think the first one of these was bought in, mainly issued from the 80s, and it works on batteries, and you would go about and you would take fallout readings. When Chernobyl had its meltdown in the 1980s, a lady called Sally Garner, she was an officer based at the ROC Post. She stood outside in a back garden with one of these and got a reading from the fallout from Chernobyl in Ukraine. The other things we've got on here, we've got a black cover on here, which is would have the photographic paper in, new photographic paper in, ready for the GZI, the ground zero indicator, the biscuit tin. And after the blast, about a minute after, just to make sure things have calmed down a little bit, the second observer would take that, go out to the door, go upstairs, go through the hatch, making sure he shuts it, of course, safety first, and then undo the biscuit tin, take out the ones that have been used, replace it with fresh photographic paper, open the lid, come back down, close the lid, come through here, and then the information from that would be radioed into the headquarters. We've also got, next to that in a green bag, a respirator. This is the Army standard issue at the time, an S6. You could buy these on the surplus market. They weren't issued directly to the Observer Corps. Any personal protective equipment was anything that you bought yourself. So it could have been bought surplus, and that's what's there. And then above that, we've got one of the maps. You can see all the different clusters. This is from the 1980s. We're post 62, which is just on the corner here of Leicestershire. 60 is Grantham, and 61 is Bourne, and that's our little cluster. Leicestershire was split for where the information went into. Some went into Coventry, some went into Bedford, and some of the information went into Lincoln.
So we've been to number 21 this morning.
So that's where you
right on the Derbyshire Nottingham border.
Next to that is a map of the local area showing some of the targets for the time. So on here we've got Grantham, which was a logistics corps depot. Just off the map, heading in that direction, we had Nottingham, which is the regional seat of government until the early 1970s. And then coming down, we've got places go past Colsterworth. We had Woolfox Lodge, which had surface-to-air missiles. We've got Cottesmore, Wittering, both had V-bombers. So pretty important targets. It was almost pointless trying to disguise these places, because if the Russians followed the A1, they'd have got most of the major targets that they needed in the 1980s. We then got a tool board. These vary from post to post. We've just got selection tools here and spanners for doing the various bits and pieces, any jobs, and also obviously a flashlight down on the bottom as well. We've got a couple of seats. There was originally a bench here in the same delightful upholstery as you've got there, but that had gone rotten, so we've got those back. And then obviously we've got a bunk bed as well. There's a spare mattress. Some posts had an extra bed, so this one didn't. This one just had a bunk bed, and they are the what look to be painfully thin mattresses for spending your time down here.
How many people were on shift?
3, sometimes 4. So sometimes they had a bed that went down the side as well. So under the bed we've got some petrol cans for the generator, which was used to charge the batteries. And to the left of that we've only got 2 at the minute, water containers. Those 2 water containers would be for down in the post, so there'd normally be 7 of those altogether. Yeah, and you would have to fill those up and bring them down with you, ready for use. Blankets, grey wool army blankets, nice and itchy. They would normally be in packets, and you would only open those in the advent of war. For the rest of the time, you would bring your own sleeping stuff anyway, for if you're on exercise or anything like that. So that's what we've got up there.
Would they sleep in here when they weren't at war then? Would people be in here overnight?
Only if they were on exercise. So the posts were never officially manned. So this, every post had a cupboard. This is a replacement one. The original one from here was burnt out. But you've got an inventory on the left-hand door. And that inventory was taken from the Cold Overton Post with permission. That's what they had in there, so we've just put that on the door. Some of the things you can see in here on the middle shelf, we've got some sort of goldy coloured tins. These are from the army ration packs that you were given. And again, you would only open these in the advent of war. You can just sit and nibble at them. The rest of the time you bought your own food. There was a gentleman who was on this post up until the end of the 1960s, a man called Tommy Ward. And when they were on exercise, he used to wait outside and flag down the fish and chip van on a Friday night so they could have something luxurious to eat instead. On the bottom shelf there is a silver teapot. That's the original teapot from this post. And we've got other supplies as well, including this little thing here called a Tommy cooker. These were originally designed for the British Army back in 1913 and were perfect for the Tommy back then, and so we're still being issued in boxes from surplus well into the 1980s. That particular one was left down here by Norman Ager, who was the last chief observer on this post. On the top, a couple of period books for some reading. John Le Carre novel, Call for the Dead, Diamonds Are Forever, a bit of a spy thing going on with that. That's the obviously the candle stick holder, an official one. There you go, it's got its number on it. That one came from Rearsby Post from Sally Garner. Obviously we've got the first aid. And then on the wall we've got starting to get some more of the instruments now. So this is the bottom of the bomb power indicator, and we've got a new scale here. You'll see it's a different colour to the rest of the instrument. This is measuring in something called kilopascals. Before that it was in pounds per square inch. So that's the pressure, and the needle would move. So if there was a nuclear blast, you'd call in the code word, which was toxin. Whatever the time was, the group, your post name, and then the pressure, and then you'd hit the reset button underneath, and then you'd wait for the next bomb. So on the wall we've got the BT box, which this one's the original to the post. It's back in its original position, and all the information for this, the cables would go out through here, and then they would follow along the wall and then out through the pipe in the corner and connect onto the telegraph poles, which obviously in a nuclear war they either get blasted over or incinerated, so which is why you needed the master post with the extendable aerial, so at least you can maintain some communication with everybody. We then got the post mirror as well. In the 60s you used to put the candle in front of that to throw the light back into the room. On the table we've got something called a teletalk. This is how you communicate with the outside world. You've got your call button and your transmit. This is where you're getting information from as well. small amount of information as to what's going on in the outside world, but it's mainly for you to send the information back to group headquarters. You would obviously transmit, and then you can start talking away. On the table is part of the fixed survey meter. At the minute, you might be able to get a nice happy reading of 0, thankfully. And this goes up through the post there, and you see the hole in the ceiling with the extendable piece. This would come up and down, and it would help measure the air conditions outside for you, give you an idea of the amount of radiation outside.
Is that the one that's missing the dome on?
Yes,
that one.
it is.
Yeah.
So moving on, we've got a lamp as well. These are the ones that were introduced sort of in the very late 1980s. Prior to that, you've got a little bulb like that, and that switch just changes between the two.
Big difference, isn't it?
Big difference, yeah. But anything to try and save the battery if you could. The only other thing, now if we swing back round to above the bed, we've got one of the air vents. So this is the back louver that you saw upstairs. This is where the air comes in. You've got a little door that would slide to protect you from blast. In the 1980s, they experimented with an air filtration system that went onto the back, and you had to pump it for 20 minutes every hour. And they calculated the amount of energy and oxygen you would expend from doing that would mean it was pointless. So they just didn't bother. But again, they're all sort of late 70s, 80s publications. So this is your shelving unit for your cooking. You could hook this on here. You had to shut this door into the post, but leave the hatch lid open when you cook, because you don't want the fumes or anything from the petrol burner to be coming into the post. Radioactive fallout, fine. Fumes, very bad for your health. Over here we've got a cargo net, which was used for getting equipment up and down into the post. And we've got the sump pump here. So any water would drain down into here, and then you'd pump away, and this would take it all the way up this pipe and empty it just behind the back of the behind the back of the hatch. To the right, we've got a delightful toilet. Smallest room in the place. So this is an Elson toilet, which is a tin bucket with a plastic lid on. Very similar to what you used to get in aircraft like Lancasters during the Second World War. And to the left of that was the generator for making sure that the batteries are charged up. That's before all the trees started to go mad. These are the photos that Officer Bellamy took for evidence of when CND broke in.
That's the people who were protesting against
nuclear weapons and things like that. So you can see the junction box was all smashed, the bomb power indicator was as well. The chair that's folded up, that's this one in the corner, and this is the post members from about 1968, 69. So this is Norman Ager on the end. That's Tommy Ward, who I mentioned earlier. And this chap here, Rex Pollandine, he was in the RAF in the 1930s. He was an observer, so he was the second person within an aircraft. And him and his mate got shut down 3 days into World War II. And they got back, and he was given a medical, and they found that he'd had rheumatic fever as a child. So they declared him medically unfit 3 days into the Second World War. And so he joined the Observer Corps. He was based at Melton. And on D-Day, when they had the seaborne observers for aircraft spotting, he was one of them. And he was on I think he was on an American destroyer doing aircraft recognition for them.
I hope you've enjoyed this little tour around Buckminster and the old underground bunker. So we're off up now to have a look at another one that's not so fortunate. So our plan from here was to head down to another bunker at Blythe, just off the A1. that wasn't so lucky. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. We was quite forcibly ushered away from the area, so we decided to take the hint. However, here is some footage of the inside of the bunker where Stephen and his family have visited on a previous occasion. And as you can see, it's night and day from the lovely restored one at Buckminster, and this one has suffered a fire at some stage, but a lot of the old implements and apparatus are still visible in the bunker, as this footage shows. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you for Stephen for lining up today, and for Stephen and Leo's company throughout the day. It's not a subject that I've ever covered before, so it was a massive learning curve for me. And also a massive thank you to Jed and Neil, who facilitated our visit at the day at Buckminster. Fantastic hosts, really knowledgeable. Really do appreciate the time and effort and allowing us to come down and film. So thanks for watching if you've made it this far, and take care, and we'll see you soon.